Welcome tonight. Lovely to see you. Look, we're all sports people. So here's the deal. Whether you play an individual sport or a team sport, do you know what a coach's last words before you go out to compete are inspiring, or can be, and they can be really helpful. I remember one manager in particular, all the team talk going on, and then at the end we'd run out of the changing room door. Without fail, he'd grab my arm, he'd look me in the eyes, and he'd say, "Lanky, go and enjoy it, son." And do you know what it did? It gave me real belief. It gave me freedom to go and play. Over the next 3 nights, we're going to be looking at the ultimate team talk from Jesus, who is the ultimate coach. And tonight, we're trying to answer that question. Whose voice are you listening to? Where is truth in a noisy world of sport? You see, we decide whose voice we listen to based upon the source of the voice, based upon the person who's speaking, don't we? Do I trust them? That's why in the Vox Box, did you hear those young people? Heard they say the voice that I most listen to? Well, it's a coach. He's going to help me. Of course he is. It's a parent who I trust. It's a friend. You know, Serena Williams, fabulous tennis player. Do you know she says her most influential voice? She says this: "My father has been the most important person in my career. He still tells me the stuff I'm doing wrong." You see what she's saying? He speaks truth into my life. I trust my father. So what about these words of Jesus? It comes right at the end of a long talk called the Sermon on the Mount. Here's a summary of the whole talk. Jesus says this. Here's a summary. He says, "A life that trusts in me looks very different from the world around." And Jesus finishes his talk with a really simple picture of 2 different kinds of people. And it's a summary of 2 different kinds of people today. "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine," says Jesus, "puts them into practice, is like a wise man who built his house on the rock." Here's the first kind of person. It's the wise man. Why do we call him the cool? Do you know, when I was a lad, that used to be kind of the in word, the cool. It just meant you were smart. It meant you were top lad. Here's the first person, the cool. And Jesus is saying, the one who listens to my words and trusts in them is like a wise man who built his house on rock. I'm no builder. Trust me on that. But I get this. If foundations are built on something immovable that cannot change, like a rock, that is a wise builder. See what happened to this house? The rain came down, verse 25, the streams rose and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. You see what happens? See what happens? The storm comes, batters the house, yet it does not fall. Why? Because of the firm foundations. They're on the rock. Outrageous words of Jesus. He's saying, here's the cool, here's the wise man. It's the person that listens to my words in a noisy world. Not just listens to them, but acts upon them, trusts in them, builds their life upon them. And you might be sitting at home in your cozy armchair thinking, why on earth would I do that? Well, we've already said, haven't we? We decide whether the voice is worth listening to based upon the source of the voice. Do you trust them? In other words, do the actions match their words? Does my coach really want the best for me? Well, he'll prove it by his actions. Does my mother really care for me? She'll prove it by her actions. Well, look at Jesus. He asks us to trust in his words, in his voice, in him. And he teaches about what he came to do. And then he acted out his words. He actually proved his words by his actions. Look at this little verse that Jesus says a little bit later on in the gospel. He says, God so loved the world that he sent his one and only son, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Look at Jesus. He lived and then he died on a cross for a purpose. Big question, is Jesus trustworthy? Yes. His actions match his words. Yes, he died so that you may live. His death brings me life. See the cool? The cool are the smart ones. Like a wise man, life is secure and steadfast. Come on, let's ground this into a bit of reality, sport in life. Let's sit down with Smalls and hear what Matthew's got to say to us.
Great. Well, very excited to have Matthew Joseph on with us today. Matthew, very welcome. Good to see you. For those of you who don't know, Matthew is an elite footballer who has had 400 appearances for a number of different professional clubs in England. And Matthew, you are now a development officer for coaches and again in the youth elite football world here in England. So great to have you on. We're just going to be asking you a couple of questions to get some thoughts on what we've just been looking at. Well, let's just dive straight in, Matthew. Here is the first question for you. So we've been looking at, and what we're looking at this evening, as we've been saying, is looking at these great voices, or the big voices that we hear in sport. For you, Matthew, throughout your football career, and now I suppose particularly in your coaching role, what are those big voices that you can so easily listen to, or the big voices that players and coaches alike are hearing in your world of sport at the moment?
It's a great question. I think for the young people, I think for the coaches, that there's so much noise going on from the people who want you to do well and those who want to lift you up. So I think just generally there's coaches, there's managers, there's parents, there's your peers, there's fans, there's people who are watching. It's really difficult to hear everyone as there's lots and lots of voices going on. Very difficult time.
Yeah, and what would you say? What are those voices saying, Matthew? What's the message of those voices, do you think, at the moment that people in the world of sport can hear?
I think there's that stuff around people wanting them to do well, so around performance, sometimes around identity, sometimes about how hard they work, about their mindset, the things that they should do, the things that they shouldn't do, the things that they should sacrifice, the things that they are required to do in order to achieve the things that they want to achieve. And it's constant, and it comes from all angles and from everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose then what we've been looking at is the voice then of Jesus in the midst of that. And as Lanx has said, obviously, and at Christians in Sport, we fully believe that Jesus speaks into our world of sport. Tell us, for you, how does the voice of Jesus and putting it into practice, we've saw it's like a wise man building his house on the rock. When for you, what did it look like for you, and when did you do that, to actually listen to the voice of Jesus in the midst of all these voices and put it into practice?
I think for me, I had a long period where I hadn't put Jesus first, and I do now and have done for years. And just because he loves us unconditionally, so whether I win, whether I lose, whether I play badly, whatever the result or the score, but whatever my performance is. And I think for the young people and the coaches that I work with, it's the same for them. That if they put Jesus first, he wants us to do well, and he's given us a God-given talent and skills for us to play whatever sports we want to play. But he loves us. He loves us unconditionally, and so that for me is a beautiful blessing. That whatever I do, I'm loved by somebody, and I'm loved whether I perform well or whether I don't perform well. And actually, that gives me and gives those young people that I work with and the coaches that I work with, gives them the encouragement to carry on.
Yeah, and that is the truth. That is, I suppose, the real heart of how Jesus transforms how we play our sport. 30 seconds then, Matthew, to finish this off. What would be the advice that you have taken on yourself and that you give to the young people listening of how we can listen to the voice of Jesus, that voice that you've just explained, in the midst of all the other voices that shout so loudly in the world of sport?
For me, it's very simple. And I understand it's not as easy for everyone else, but it's putting my faith first. So everywhere around me, whether it's on the boards written behind me or written down on my computer, it's faith, family, and football. And I am obsessive about football. So you can imagine how obsessive I am then about my faith and my family. Every day is football. I love it, and I love my sport, and as I'm sure all the young people do at Christians in Sport. But that just shows you how much that my faith and my belief in my faith comes above everything else.
Super, Matthew, thanks very much. We're going to finish off each of these interviews with how we finish our memory verse. So on the count of three, let's give a little boom 1, 2, 3.
Boom.
Matthew, hey, didn't it make sense? I trust in Jesus because he loves me. I get him. Well, back to the story of the two people. Do you remember, represented by the two houses, two different foundations? Listen and act on Jesus' words by trusting in him. That's the cool. But what about the fool? Well, let's go. Verse 26. But everyone who hears these words of mine does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. Hear my words, but don't act upon them. You're like a fool, says Jesus. You are a fool. That's really harsh, isn't it? And you might be thinking, well, it is hard to hear the voice of Jesus in a very noisy world, and a very noisy world of sport. There's so many voices that are influencing us. You heard that from Matthew. Let me talk about a few now, perhaps. These will ring clear. What about this one? Be up to date. Wear the right gear. Play the right games. Listen to the right music to fit in. Be clever. Work hard. Get the results. Be healthy. Eat this, drink that, rest, exercise. Be different. Don't fit the norm. Dare to be different. Let it go. Be liked. Have as many friends as possible. Be rich. Go get the world. Be Gaza. Listen, Gaza was my favourite footballer. He still is. Brilliant, brilliant player. And when I was a lad, I was just thinking I just wanted to be like him. Sporting achievement was everything. See, these things might not be wrong in and of themselves, but Jesus is saying if you put them foundational, if you live for them, if they consume your thoughts, if you're broken when you don't have it, it is like a man who builds his house on sand. A life that will easily collapse. Look, I've heard it say that the test of a good building, it's not on its outside beauty, outward appearance, but on the strength of its foundation. Pointless if a life looks great, but is built on nothing but sand. And look at the consequences. See there, verse 27. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Cleverness, being up to date, being liked, sporting achievement. You see, if they're my foundation, my life will come crashing down. Jesus is talking about the final crash. It's right at the end of his talk. These words are meant to be a real challenge to his listeners, to make us think, and us ourselves, make us think what is foundational in our lives. Even if you think that the final crash, death itself, is so far off, do you know what? We cannot be sure. We cannot. It's impossible to exaggerate the importance of the choice of the cool and the fool. See, if you listen to the voice of Jesus, trust him. He has shown that he brings life by his actions. Do you know, he didn't come to add value to life. He didn't come to make you feel better about yourself. And he didn't come even to make you a better person. He came to save. He died in your place to save you, to take the punishment that we deserve. He died to transform you, to bring you real life so that you can really live and go and play sport for how it's meant to be played. Why? Because he loves you. But you see, if you listen to these words of Jesus and ignore them, if you make other voices a foundation to build life upon, it leads to destruction. It's so clear. Look, we've got time over the next few days to consider the ultimate team talk from Jesus. I think there are three things that will help us think about this. Help us to act rightly, listen and put your trust in Jesus. Do that this week. Or remember and come back to Jesus. Remember Jesus' voice, come back to him. Or continue listening to and living for Jesus in your world of sport. It's the ultimate team talk because it's about the ultimate foundation for life. The voice of Jesus that points to his death, where he died for you. What a foundation. Whose voice are you listening to? we're going to take some moments just to reflect on that question.